Welcome back, guys, to my final ever entry in my top 100 movies of the decade countdown. If you're only just joining me for the first time ever, then I would strongly recommend going back to the beginning of this countdown and watching them all in the correct order from numbers 100 to 11 so you can appreciate this countdown for all its majesty. I'll pop a link up there to that playlist if you want to watch them in the correct order. It's been a long and time-consuming process spanning almost 6 months of my life. However, it's been a labor of love, and I just want to say thank you to all of you that have been watching, hitting the like button, sharing with your friends, commenting and subscribing. You've made it all the worthwhile for me, so many thanks. So we are finally here, my top 10 favorite movies of the decade, my personal best of the best masterpieces. As with the entirety of this countdown, these films are subjective to me. You might not appreciate and love them to the same degree that I do, but these films really reflect my taste. It's my opinion, and remember, tastes change. This might be my top 10 right now, but in 5 years' time, it could look very different. Hopefully some of you will agree with my picks, but I also hope if there's any films here that you haven't seen, that you'll be inspired to give them a watch. These really are some of my favorite films. And if you guys have enjoyed this series and want to help my channel grow, please do hit the like button, and of course you can share this video with your friends and followers. It really does help a lot. Alright, top 10 of the decade. Here we go. Okay, so taking the 10th spot of the best movies of the decade is a film which never fails to make the hairs on my arms stand up on end. It's the film which put Damien Chazelle on the map. It is the electrifying Whiplash. What a movie. I remember going to see this film back in 2014. I didn't know anything about it going into it, and I came out of it floored. What an utterly captivating piece of cinema. Whiplash is a thrilling two-person character study exploring the turbulent relationship between a cantankerous teacher called Fletcher, played by J.K. Simmons, and an aspiring drummer called Andrew, played by Miles Teller. It's like Full Metal Jacket in a fancy conservatoire. Striving for greatness is a common occurrence that we see in cinema, but Whiplash viscerally shows the literal blood, sweat, and tears that can go into perfecting a craft. And for Andrew, he has to deal with the psychological warfare from his mentor Fletcher, who abuses his students with verbal, emotional, and sometimes physical lashings in order to push his students to greatness.
Oh my dear God. Are you one of those single-tier people?
J.K. Simmons as Fletcher is perfection. This is a once-in-a-lifetime role that feels like the role he was born to play. Chazelle's jazzy, frantic pacing, yellow palette, and claustrophobic camera work make Whiplash one of the most nerve-wracking experiences ever, which culminates in an absolutely dazzling and breathtaking finale. It's the cinematic equivalent of an orgasm. I have never left a film so satisfied. Coming in at number 9, we have my favorite comedy of the decade. Some say it's the female Superbad, some say the Teenage Bridesmaids, but regardless of comparisons, it's still a fresh and original gem. It's Olivia Wilde's Booksmart. I ruddy love this movie. It's a total rainy day, first date, sick day, or sleepover movie. Really, it's an any occasion movie. Every decade there is one quintessential teen comedy movie which perfectly encapsulates the feeling of that decade. For the 90s it was Clueless, for the noughties it was Mean Girls, and for the 10s it's Booksmart. The story of two straight-A students played by Caitlin Dever and Beanie Feldstein having this one epic balls-to-the-walls night out before graduation is an absolutely awesome joyride. Booksmart is packed with hysterical mishaps, rich, equally funny supporting characters, plenty of quotable dialogue, and the main thing that keeps it grounded is that it has so much heart. Comedy is such a difficult genre to nail because it's so subjective, but I can't remember a film these past 10 years which made me laugh as consistently and as hard as Booksmart did. It's fitting that the funniest film of the decade is female written, female directed, and led by two staggeringly funny female leads. Booksmart is conclusive proof that the future is in fact female. Malala! Next up at number 8, we have the third and final appearance of the trio of Best Director winners, The Three Amigos. It's the mesmerizing space survival thriller from Alfonso Cuarón, Gravity. There are certain movies which are landmark achievements for what they pull off. They are trailblazing, first-of-their-kind experiences which are completely awe-inspiring and leave an indelible mark on you as a viewer. Much like seeing the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park for the first time, Gravity also has that feeling of wonderment of seeing something done for the first time. For the majority of us, it's the closest that we will ever get to space travel. Cuarón successfully gives the viewer that feeling of weightlessness. he puts you in an environment which is both gorgeous and hostile. And with his silky camera work, Emmanuel Lubinski's dazzling cinematography, as well as the pioneering use of CGI visuals, Gravity is a completely immersive and stunning watch. In fact, this movie is so effective that when things start going bad for our protagonist Ryan, played in this film by Sandra Bullock, and she starts tumbling into the abyss, I had a physiological response in the cinema. I felt disoriented, I've started to panic just like Ryan, and I even found myself listening to the instructions of George Clooney's Kowalski when he says, "You need to sip, don't gulp." I found myself doing that in the cinema. That's how immersed I was in it. I fretted for my own safety. It's a feeling I will treasure forever because no other movie has made me have a response like that. Gravity combines thrills, terror, and wonder into one gloriously entertaining and unforgettable ride. And to this day, it's the only 3D movie where I actually thought the 3D made it better. Alfonso Cuarón is a master of his craft. Coming in at number 7 on my favourite films of the decade, we have Christopher Nolan's most ambitious and mind-bending film of his career thus far. It's the thinking man's blockbuster, Inception. After the runaway success of his masterful The Dark Knight, Warner Brothers gave Christopher Nolan carte blanche to make whatever movie he wanted. So he went with the all-star, concept-driven, genre-blending thrill ride that is Inception. 2 back-to-back masterpieces. It almost seems greedy. The plot of Inception sees professional extractor Dom Cobb, played in this film by Leonardo DiCaprio, and his team go into the subconscious of their target where they implant an idea, or inception as it's called, into their target's mind. This is why audiences love Christopher Nolan movies, because he's doing what nobody else is doing in cinema. He continues to push the envelope with completely original and cerebral storytelling and giving audiences things that nobody's even attempted before. Inception is an exhilarating espionage film which blends sci-fi, James Bond action, and heist thrills into a cohesive and intelligent ride which only gets better with every rewatch. It's jam-packed with how the hell did they do that sequences, gripping performances, captivating visuals, as well as an iconic, balmy soundtrack from Hans Zimmer, which was so impactful it completely revolutionized the style of modern-day film soundtracks.
You mustn't be afraid to dream a little bigger, darling.
Inception truly is a game changer, a one-of-a-kind, and Christopher Nolan's pièce de résistance. Coming in at number 6, we have a film which is visual poetry. It's Barry Jenkins' soulful masterpiece, Moonlight. Adapted from playwright Terrell Alvin McCrady's In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue. In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue. Moonlight tells the story of a young African-American gay boy called Chiron who's grown up in the modern-day inner-city slums of Miami. God, I think I'm gonna keep that in. Jenkins uses a triptych narrative structure chronicling Chiron's journey from boyhood to manhood in 3 distinct chapters, each played by a different actor portraying Chiron at a particular point in his life. Chapter 1 is Little, played by Alex R. Hibbert, Chapter 2 is Chiron, played by Ashton Sanders, and Chapter 3 is Black, played by Trevante Rhodes. Moonlight is an entrancing character study which explores an untapped resource that we don't often see in mainstream cinema, that being black identity, masculinity, and sexuality. The significance of Moonlight can't be understated. This film represents a significant turning point in the landscape of cinema. Although its Best Picture win at the Oscars will always be marred by the infamous envelope mix-up scandal, its win couldn't have been any more deserving or satisfying. It was the underdog movie about the disenfranchised minorities. In a way, the way that it won was just as poetic as the film itself. Every single frame of this film is immaculate. There's so much gorgeous symbolism and evocative imagery, thanks to the passionate neon-lit cinematography from James Laxton, as well as the moody, provocative score from Nicholas Patel. Barry Jenkins truly has made a film for the ages, a quietly powerful tour de force which tenderly touches upon the African-American experience with sensitivity and dignity. Moonlight is essential viewing, and it's a film which makes you feel alive. Ooh, top 5! Good golly wow, we're really in the end game now. Coming in at number 5, we have another LGBTQ film which is quite frankly a work of art. It's the coming-of-age gay romance drama Call Me By Your Name. Adapted from the novel by Andre Osimon and directed by Luca Guadagnino, Call Me By Your Name is such a deeply touching tale of first love. Set over a lazy Italian summer in 1983, the film follows the blossoming romance between 17-year-old American-Italian Elio, a star-making performance from Timothée Chalamet, and the dashing grad student Oliver a never better Army Hammer. There's a transcending quality about Call Me By Your Name. Somehow Guadagnino has managed to bottle the essence of summer romance and sexual awakening into this film. Every single frame is dripping with luscious sensuality. The passion oozes off the screen thanks to its two phenomenal performances from its two leads, as well as the exquisite cinematography from Seyombo McDeeprom. Guadagnino's direction is so intimate and erotic. The camera lingers with its gaze. It captures the feeling of infatuation and desire. It's almost dreamlike. Call Me By Your Name is also the most sensory movie I think I've ever watched. It's positively bursting with mouth-watering, nostril-tickling imagery. The vibrant orchards, the apricots, the peaches, the soft-boiled eggs at breakfast, the cigarette smoke. You can even feel how cold the water is when Elio and Oliver go for a dip. It's a tantalizing, euphoric watch. God, my mouth is just salivating now just talking about it. Call Me By Your Name is an achingly sweet film which touches the heart and the soul. Coming in at number 4, we have a film which I honestly have difficulty putting into words why it means so much to me, but let's hope I do it justice. It's the ferocious melodrama / black comedy from director Xavier Dolan, Mommy. I see a lot of movies. Duh. But one of the great joys of doing what I do is when you accidentally stumble upon an incredible film. I saw Mommy at the 2014 London Film Festival. I had a gap in my schedule of all the films that I wanted to see that day, so I went into Mommy just as a means to pass the time. However, little did I know I would be walking into one of my favorite films of all time, as well as introducing me to one of the most exciting filmmaker voices of my generation. Mommy tells the story of a widowed mother called Di, played in this film by Anne Dorval, whose troublesome hyperactive son called Steve, played by Antoine Olivier Pilon, gets thrown out of this state care facility after he starts a fire. Steve is a lot to handle. He's got ADHD, he's a tornado of energy, and he's prone to violent outbursts. Di is also having trouble holding down a job, and now thrusted with the responsibility of looking after a problematic son, is struggling to keep her head above water. But when Steve and Di form a kinship with their shy neighbor Kyla, played in this film by Suzanne Clement, these three damaged individuals find something in each other. How Mommy makes me feel is kinda indescribable. This film is so emotionally intense. Watching these three characters together on screen is like witnessing a cinematic chemistry class. It's explosive, responsive, beautiful. At times it's dangerous. There's so much raw humanity on display. There were very few moments where I felt relaxed watching Mommy because Dolan crafts this heightened atmosphere of captivity, which is beautifully punctuated by the almost square 1:1 aspect ratio, which confines the characters into this tiny cell. It feels cramped, at times claustrophobic, and when Steve has one of his episodes, you really feel the danger because there's nowhere else to go. There's a sequence in Mommy, you'll know it when it happens, which is practically euphoric. It's pure catharsis for both the characters and the audience. It is a moment where the characters break free of their confines, and just for a moment, you think everything's gonna be okay. Mommy is worth watching for this one powerful scene alone, but it's also got three sensational performances, breathtaking cinematography, a vivid color palette, a pop-enthused soundtrack, and also an avant-garde use of aspect ratios. Mommy is the type of film that renews your faith in cinema, and it will hit you like a ton of bricks. Oh my god, we're at the top 3! I'm gonna start getting emotional soon. Taking the 3rd spot and the bronze medal for my favorite movies of the decade, we have a horror film that, from the title alone, sounds as generic and as formulaic as they come, but in actuality turned out to be one of the smartest movies ever made. It's Drew Goddard's The Cabin in the Woods. Penned by Goddard and master of subversion Joss Whedon, The Cabin in the Woods is their love letter to the horror genre. The Cabin in the Woods is to the 10s what Wes Craven's Scream was to the 90s, a meta-critique on the conventions and cliches of horror movies, as well as us, the horror movie-going public. On the surface, this film looks like typical cookie-cutter horror. 5 archetypal characters, the jock, the whore, the nerd, the fool, and the virgin all head off to a remote cabin in the woods for a weekend of drug and alcohol-fueled frivolity, and are then ceremoniously killed off one by one. It's a story that we've seen countless iterations of over the years. And that's exactly the point. Throughout the noughties and the 10s, all we seemed to consume in the horror genre was remakes and sequels that Hollywood kept regurgitating out. We became so perfectly content consuming the same recycled and rehashed ideas over and over and over again that nobody even bothered to offer up anything new. So Whedon and Goddard, in a genius bit of marketing trickery, delivered a film packaged as one thing, but once you got inside it, turned out to be something completely different. It was a real Trojan horse of a movie. movie. The Cabin in the Woods was a welcome breath of fresh air to a genre that had become derivative and stagnant. Full of twists and turns, The Cabin in the Woods geniusly satirizes and deconstructs everything that we've come to expect from the horror genre. It's a pastiche which somehow manages to still be its own thing. The Cabin in the Woods was a genuine surprise when it first came out because of its originality and its unpredictability. It's an intelligent film that delivers both scares and laughs. It really is a less you know, the better type movie. In fact, The Cabin in the Woods might be the poster child for that expression. But if you haven't seen it, you don't know what you're missing. You think you know this movie, well, think again. Coming in at number 2 and taking the silver medal, we have a social satire which established its writer-director Jordan Peele as a modern-day Hitchcock. It's the thought-provoking racial horror Get Out. Not so much the horror film that we wanted, but the horror film that we needed. Jordan Peele's genius dissection of a supposedly post-racial America revealed the ugly, sinister truth lurking behind the facade of liberal progressivism. This film made a star out of Daniel Kaluuya, who plays our protagonist Chris, a young black man who goes to visit his white girlfriend Rose's parents for a lovely weekend in the suburbs, and then finds himself in a whole lot of racially awkward bother. Just when you thought there was no original ideas left in Hollywood, Jordan Peele comes along and delivers this masterpiece. I think the reason for its effectiveness is because it managed to open our eyes to a very real and ever-present horror in society: white liberal racism, which is made even scarier by the fact that it's often unintentional. Peele addresses this real-life horror with the best weapon there is: humor. There are so many deliciously cringy scenes where Chris is subjected to racial profiling, stereotyping, and passive racism from Rose's "we're definitely not racist" forward-thinking family and friends. I can't help but squirm in delight when I watch this film because Get Out encourages introspection. It asks the viewer to look inward because you might find you're actually part of the problem too, but laughing at it helps you to learn from it. This was Jordan Peele's directorial debut, and there is so much instantly recognizable iconography in this film. The Fruit Loops, the bocce ball, the deer, the teacup, saucer and spoon, and of course, the sunken place. All of these elements have become just as famous as Jordan Peele has. It's also a film which shows us who we are and where we are as a society right now. It really is one of the defining films of the decade. Wow, here we are. 99 amazing movies have come and gone, but we have finally arrived at number 1. I thought long and hard about what I wanted to put at the top because I wanted it to be a movie which I loved, but also meant something. And in the end, this movie was perfect because it acts as a bridge from the past decade and into the next. Taking the gold medal and coming in at number 1 on my top 100 movies of the decade is the little Korean movie which took the world by storm. It's the darkly comedic social satire from Bong Joon-ho. It's the one, the only, Parasite. If you're familiar with my channel, then you already know how much I adore this film. I've done flipping video essays on why Parasite is a freaking masterpiece. Yeah, I'll pop a link to that video essay at the end of this video if you want to check that out. Parasite is a film which has left a permanent mark on the cultural zeitgeist as well as the history books. A perfectly balanced societal thriller which is steeped in allegory, symbolism, and of course, metaphor.
야, 이거 진짜 상징적인 거네.
I've said so much about this movie already on my channel that I don't know what else there is to say, but Parasite is intelligent, hilarious, suspenseful, chilling. Really, there's no shortage of superlatives to describe this film. But I can say that this film is a prime example of the power of word of mouth. This film spread like wildfire and became an international crossover hit. A film which critics, audiences, and even the Academy loved, so much so that they crowned it as their first non-English speaking film to win Best Picture at the Oscars. I find it rather fitting that we say goodbye to the previous decade by starting the new one with such a historical watershed victory. Parasite is about as close to perfection as you can get in a film. It's a once in a decade, maybe even a century type film, which systematically changes the future of cinema forever and for the better. Parasite is everything. And there we go, guys! Oh my god, those are my top 100 movies of the decade. But as always, this is just One Bloke's Opinion. I want to hear from you guys. What were your favorite movies of the decade? And what did you think of mine? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Were there any movies that you love that didn't make it into this countdown and you think should have? Whatever your opinions are, please do let me know in the comment section down below. Let your voice be heard. If you guys appreciate this series and you want to help my channel grow, please do share this video with your friends and followers. It goes a long way. And if you want to follow me on social media as well, my Twitter, Instagram, it's on the video description down below. Please do hit that like button. And for more movie and TV content just like this, don't forget to click subscribe. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you to all of you who supported me on this crazy journey. You have made it all the worthwhile. It'll be another 10 years until I have to do another one of these countdowns, but until then, for more things related to movies, TV, and popcorn culture, I'm Luke Hearfield, and I'll see you next time.